We request that quite often, about every year, if we can. We are going to sing the Star Spangled Banner, and it's in the Brown Book on page 362, but we're doing it just a tad different. The Rigger Quartet is going to sing the first verse, and then the rest of us, are coming in on the second and third verse, which you probably haven't sung for a long time. So, page 362 in the Brown, you notice we color code our hymnals. So, when they're ready. And while you're still standing, we'll do the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. When we think about the flag, we know it's weathered a variety of national attitudes since it first flew over it first flew over the Army. We think about it ranging from reverence to indifference to maybe some problems. The flag and patriotism have been interwoven. The national anthem, if you remember, we just sang it, it's really about the flag. I mean, yeah, it's our national anthem, but when we think about it, it's really about the flag, not the land, and really not the people, although that's in there. Woodrow Wilson, president, said the flag is an embodiment, not a sentiment, of history. The flag and the country were created at the same time. The flag has undergone changes in appearances from 13 stripes and 13 stars to 15 stripes and stars, and back to 13 stripes, and then as each state was added, another star was added. So we're right now at 50. 13 stripes, 50 stars. It became Old Glory in 1831 when Captain William Driver unfurled the new flag before setting sail from Salem to the South Pacific and said, "I name thee Old Glory." And since then, the name has stuck, and we often call it Old Glory. The Civil War first inspired devotion-like attitude as a unifying banner for the soldiers and the North. President Lincoln refused to take off the stars for the southern states. In 1861, in Hartford, Connecticut, it was celebrated on June 14th as Flag Day, but not until 1916 did June 14th become the official Flag Day. The Pledge of Allegiance was written by Francis Bellamy in 1892, published in his Youth Companion, and used publicly for the first time on Columbus Day, which was celebrated in Chicago that same year. The flag underwent some lesser patriotic feelings during the Great Depression. During World War II and until the 1960s, patriotism remained high, but many of you went through the 60s, and so you remember some of the problems with the flag. It was used in the Civil Rights Movement. It was flown over various times to remind Americans the reason for the protest. And then during the Vietnam era, the flag was used for protesting the war, a time of dissension in the land. As a sidebar, in 1969, the flag was flown on the moon, which was interesting because they wanted to put the United Nations flag up there, but Congress says, we paid for it, we're flying the American flag. By the 1970s, the flag had diminished as a national symbol. In the Winter Olympics in February 1980, a motley band of ice hockey players upset the powerful Soviet team and won the gold medal. And goalie Jim Craig draped the flag around himself, and the stars and stripes began appearing again. Then in the 1990s, the Gulf War, and later September 11th, the flag was used and its waving came back to show Americans and the world our patriotism. Once again, the flag represents many different ideals to different people, but it is still the banner of our country. I would like you to turn in the black hymnal, it's the smaller one, to number 2191. The black one, 2191. Thank you, Kevin, Paul, and Deb. It's always good to have Kevin here. That is the Navy hymn. What's interesting, the Navy is the only one that has an official hymn. I've looked for others and they're just kind of, well, no. So with that in mind, we're going to have Pastor Mike, a former Navy man, come and talk about his life.
Well, good evening, and thank you for coming out this evening and spending some time with us and honoring the country and the birthday of the country. And so for those of you who know me, I'm sorry. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Pastor Mike Cater, and it's my distinct privilege to be the pastor here as well as at Barrett United Methodist and St. Peter's Lutheran Church. But before I was a pastor, I spent 31 years, 7 months, and 2 days in the United States Navy. I did not count it. They handed me a piece of paper at the end to give it to me, so I just remembered the number. And during all those years, I spent associated with the United States Submarine Force. And so this evening, I was going to talk a little bit about the Submarine Force, and there'll be a couple videos for you to kind of get an idea of what it's like to be on a submarine. And for those of you who have toured World War II submarines at museums someplace, Navy nuclear power submarines are a whole lot bigger. I mean, in those World War II submarines, you pretty much had to go outside to change your mind. So as we start to look at what the U.S. Submarine Force is, I'd like to start with a video that the commander of the Submarine Force has put out. So, there we go. So you can see sometimes it can be pretty exciting on a submarine. Well, in case you didn't catch all those numbers, let me give you just some ideas here. There's essentially three types of submarines in the United States Navy. There's the fast attack submarines. And these are the hunter-killer submarines. These are the submarines that go out and they chase down other submarines, that they follow other people's fleets around. And Not that I could tell you this, but sometimes sit in other people's porch just taking pictures. And there's 3 different active classes right now. There's the Virginia class, the Seawolf class, and the Los Angeles class. The Virginia class is really becoming the new weapon for them. Fast attack submarines are about 360 feet long and they're about 35 feet in diameter. And so you put about 120 people in that tube, plus all the equipment. Gets to be a little bit of fun. The official speed is in excess of 20 knots. I will tell you that the Virginia and the Seawolf class can go a lot more in excess of 20 knots than the Los Angeles class can. And they can go in excess of 400 feet deep into the ocean. They can actually go a lot further than that, but that is the official title. The second type of submarine are called the Fleet Ballistic Missile Submarines. They're often referred to as boomers because when they go to sea, they are the 3rd most powerful country in the world all by themselves. And that is the Trident class. It's the Ohio class, named after the first ship in the class. And there are 14 of them. There are 24 tubes on each boomer, on each of the Tridents. And each of those tubes can have multiple warheads in them. And I will tell you that when the Polaris missile first came out, which was back in the 1960s, they could pretty much hit the right city. And then they kind of advanced that to where they could pretty much hit the right block. And now with the Trident missiles, from roughly 6,000 miles away, they can hit the right building in the right block in the right city. Of course, when you're shooting nuclear power, or when you're shooting nuclear bombs off, you don't really have to be that close, but that's how accurate our weaponry is. And just so that we all know, the USS Nebraska is a Trident submarine, and it is SSBN 739, and it is currently stationed in Bremerton, Washington. On the boomers, there are 2 crews. They spend 77 days approximately at sea, and they spend approximately 35 days in upkeep. So they'll come in, they'll change crews over, they'll do an upkeep, and then they'll go to sea for approximately 77 days. They'll come back in, change crews, and start all over again. Whereas on the fast attack, 1 crew all the time. Now, what the Navy did was kind of a smart thing, is really after the Cold War and the collapse of the Soviet Union, they realized that they didn't need as many of the boomers. And so they took 4 of them and they converted them to guided missile submarines. Or we refer to them as slow attacks because they're not as fast as the fast attacks. And so they converted those Trident submarines, and there was 4 of them, and they were really outfitted to put special forces on there. They can carry up to 66 SEALs at a time. They can put these dry dock shelters on there, and they can launch SEALs while at sea and take them into the missions. They also have converted many of the tubes to where they can launch Tomahawk missiles, and they can go to sea with 72 Tomahawk missiles, which again is quite a bit of firepower for any particular country, much less for 1 ship. Now, a lot of people have asked me what's life like on a submarine. Well, I have a video here in a minute that I'll show you, but I'll just kind of give you a brief and then maybe talk a little bit afterwards. But essentially, when we go to sea and we submerge, we go on to an 18-hour day. And you have 6 hours where you stand watch. You have 6 hours where you get to do your qualifications. You get to do your maintenance. You get to eat. You get to watch movies. You get to read. You get to do a limited amount of exercise. And then you get 6 hours that's called your sleep time. And so then you get up and you start all over again. And so the cooks, and you'll see this in the video, but they're making 4 meals a day. And a lot of times the only way you know really what time it is by what meal is being served, because there is no daylight. Personally, the longest I've ever been underway without surfacing, without seeing the sun, is 72 days. And the neatest place I ever got to go, the most exotic place I ever got to go, was the North Pole. And I thought that was pretty neat. I got to run all the way around the world without stopping. And I'm fond to tell people that my first night in Iowa was colder than my night at the North Pole. Of course, I was at the North Pole in May, and it was a balmy 6 degrees that day. And the first night I spent in Iowa was in December, and it was -6 that night. I told my wife I didn't really want to go back to Iowa. I'm going to show you this video, and then I'll talk about a couple things that you may pick up on. This was made several years ago, and it's on the crew is the USS Toledo, which is a Los Angeles fast attack submarine.
Bringing you the news and information you need from the people making a difference. This is Comcast Newsmakers.
It has enough power to destroy several warships, but it needs more than 100 men to operate properly. However, the space on the ship isn't exactly made to accommodate that many sailors. We take a look at how the men on the USS Toledo go about their everyday lives on this small vessel.
Some common misconceptions about submarine life are that we would be subject to claustrophobia. You can tell that the quarters are a little close. However, you know, the workspaces are just as open as they are in many other engagements.
From the kitchen to the sleeping areas to even the laundry room, space is limited.
We only have one washer and one dryer for the whole crew. It's used a lot. We have a schedule actually that's posted right here, actually, that we use to dictate when personnel can use it. When you do laundry though, you have to make sure that you're in there 24 all the time during the whole cycle. You want to make sure, because the biggest thing is the dryer gets really hot, so you want to make sure that somebody's here just in case that you need to shut the or turn off the dryer, that you can turn off the dryer really quick.
In the kitchen, it's one cook preparing meals for about 100 sailors at a time, and they do so all day long.
After breakfast, the cook starts to prepare lunch at about 8 o'clock in the morning. We serve lunch at 11. We serve 4 meals a day. Every 6 hours underway, we're serving a meal.
And these guys get pretty hungry. They line up in the hallway to wait their turn just to get some grub.
We usually just wait in line, whoever has to watch the next, gets to eat first, they get first dibs on the food, the delicious food we get to eat, and play games until we get to eat.
Today is a good day for lunch. Some days they're a little slow, but today is one of their finer dining moments.
The one place with space is the captain's stateroom. However, it's not exactly a home away from home.
It's like a big luxurious RV, I guess. I get the most luxurious accommodations on board the ship, but you can see they're still pretty sparse.
Every inch of this room is versatile. Just check out the bed.
You can see my bed here now in folded down mode, but you know, this is also where I do crew interviews for qualification exams or something. But the bed folds up into the wall. The seats pop up from below, and then the table folds out. And this is where I do most of my work then.
And for the enlisted on the boat, they have to share the sleeping racks. And with so many men aboard, they even have to add beds to the torpedo room.
We have people actually sleeping right now, so that's why it's a little dark in here and you see little lights.
And when it's time to wash up, the guys have to share the showers as well. It's known as the head.
The lower overhead is another bathroom, they call it. As you can see, you're looking at the shower right now. Showers are pretty small, but generally when you take a shower, you don't want to get water everywhere, so there's a little latch right here to shut the door, close it real quick for you. Squeegee is actually for when you're finished taking a shower, you need to wipe down the head actually to maintain the bright work in here. You don't want any standing water in here, it's going to cause obviously soap scum and so forth, so you want to avoid doing that.
As you can see with these types of close living quarters, there has to be some type of trust among the crew.
What I see on those surface ships is that you build those bonds on kind of a divisional or a departmental level on most of the surface ships, and the submarine experience is that we're small enough of a command that you build those bonds all the way across the command.
After months of not seeing sunlight, What these sailors love the most, the chance to stand watch on the bridge.
When we're submerged for long periods, for instance, for me, I've been submerged 60 days. I think it is a good release to actually get a feel of the sunlight, especially even in the short days, short runs, when you're like for a week or two or even a couple days. Just going up topside, feeling the sun. It's a pretty good experience. Pretty good experience just to feel that, and also the fresh air too.
In this hour's Newsmakers, we learned how sailors aboard the USS Toledo take on major responsibilities while learning to adjust to a not-so-comfortable environment. I'm Spiro Cannon. Thank you for joining us.
So you can see that it does get kind of tight in a submarine. And like I said, there's a lot more room than you might think. On the other hand, it's not really the lap of luxury. Just a couple little quirks, things that you might not ever think about. After you spend, 2 months underway, submerged under the water, where you can never see longer than 50 or 60 feet in front of you, when you come back, your depth perception is a little off. And wives always hated driving with us when we came back, because either we were on somebody's bumper or we were stopping, 200 feet before the red light. So usually we had to wait a couple days before we drove, at least with our wives. The other thing is I always found, and you'd be surprised at how stinky clean, fresh air really is. After you've been, breathing purified air, oxygen, we make the oxygen ourselves under the water, and you've been, breathing that purified air for a long time. When you crack open those hatches and you get all those smells, that is just not a good smell at all. I mean, you get used to it again real quick, and let me tell you, the inside of a submarine really stinks compared to outside, but that first time you crack the hatch, it gets a little tough on you. The other thing that you don't really necessarily take into consideration, but things we used to do, is if we were on station, if we were sitting out there monitoring someone else and we wanted the crew basically to spend most of the time in their racks so they're not up walking around making noise, we would actually lower the O2 level and raise the CO2 level so that people would just naturally be tired and want to sleep. Then, of course, when it was time to clean up the ship, because you always have to have field day, it doesn't matter what you're doing, you got to clean, because that's the Navy way. Then we would crank up the oxygen bleed, and we would crank, get the CO2 down so everybody would be up and have a lot of oxygen in their system. So that's different ways that we would kind of mess with the people. But all in all, it's quite the brotherhood, and it is amazing how tight you are, and when you're out there, and when you're on one of the boomers, and you're out there, and your job is to go out there and hide so that no one can find you, so that you can fire off missiles at any given moment. Not that you ever wanted to, but if you had to, you could. And so you're out there, and we would call it doing 3 knots to nowhere. So we'd be out there going slow, just poking holes in the ocean and trying to be quiet. It becomes incredibly boring. And that guy that you're spending 6 out of every 18 hours with, maybe 10 out of every 18 hours with, day after day after day, you run out of things to talk about pretty quick. So you wind up telling each other things that you would never tell another living being. And when you get back from a deployment, and you get back and you say, man, I don't even want to see these guys at all. And then the next day you're calling them up and saying, hey, you want to come over for dinner? You want to go play basketball? So it is really a great brotherhood. I will make myself available after the program this evening if you have any other questions about it, about submarine life and the quarters and some of the things some of the operations and stuff we would do. Again, I spent a long time doing it. The first 12 years I was in the Navy, I was enlisted, and I spent riding the submarines. And then the last 20 years I was in the Navy, I was an officer, and I was basically a repair officer, mostly for submarines, but also for surface ships. So it was quite the life. I just want to, brag a little bit. These are the submarines that I was associated with. The first submarine that I was attached to was USS Henry L. Stimson in Charleston, South Carolina. That was a boomer. I was on the gold crew because why would you want to be on the blue crew? Another submarine that I was attached to was USS Von Steuben. That was another boomer, again, out of Charleston, South Carolina. I was also attached to the USS Ray and did a med run with her where we spent a lot of time poking around the med at the height of the Cold War, just watching stuff. And I was also on board the USS Seahorse, and that's the ship I got to go to the North Pole on, which was not necessarily a good deal at the time, but it turned out to be one of the most interesting things I probably ever did. And of course, the best built submarine in the entire fleet was the USS Honolulu, SSN 718. Every nut, every bolt, every weld, all me. I did it. Now, I was a plank owner. In fact, I was the 8th person ever to report to actually the PCU, to the pre-commissioning unit, unnamed hull. When I got there, we didn't even have a name, and we became the Honolulu. And that was just a phenomenal, phenomenal ship. People I'm still in touch with now, and just a great time. And I always felt cheated that the best command I was ever at was like in my 5th year in the Navy, and it was all kind of downhill after that. So, great command. And every now and then when you're out to sea, you just get to see some really neat things, like submarines playing in the bow of the submarine. And it was always good luck for a sailor to have dolphins bring you either out of port or back into port. And so it was always good to see them as we came in and out. Thank you for your attention. And now, Jan, I think you're going to have the choir.
The choir will sing after the choir. Come on up. There. After the choir, we are all invited to the basement for ice cream and cake. So, don't forget.
I lift my lamp beside the golden door. May we be a shining light to the nations, a shining light to the peoples of the earth, till the whole world sees the glory of your name. May your good light shine through us. May your kingdom come to the nations. Your will be done in the peoples of the earth, till the whole world knows that Jesus Christ is Lord. May your kingdom come.
Would you rise for the benediction, please? Our Father, we come thanking you that we live in this country, that we have enjoyed the freedoms that you have blessed us with. We know that we have more to do, but we can be a shining light right here in this community. We ask that you would bless this people, that we would go forth and take you with us. And as we go forward, remember that we are your people. In Christ's name, amen. And you may go downstairs. It's out the doors, to the right, to the right, to the right. There you are.